Hi, everybody. I think I'm live online. Thank you to Houston Library for inviting me today. And I am coming to you from the beautiful business center of the Westin Times Square, New York City. Because various technical reasons, but this is the great background. Hope you enjoy the copy machine, door. This is it. So, a little bit about me. Hello, I'm Rachel Caine, and I write, among many things, the Morganville Vampires series, which is currently 12 books, and it is going to 15 if you haven't heard that. So that's very exciting. And I also write in the adult side the Weather Warden series, the Outcast season series, and the Revivalist series. Revivalist is currently underway, and book 2 is already out. It's called 2 Weeks Notice, and there's another one coming out next August called Terminated. So that's my obligatory, that's what I do. I also have another young adult book that's going to come out in February 2012, which is called Prince of Shadows, and we're going to be very mysterious about that. It's not a Morganville book, but I'm really excited about it, and I think you will be too once you start hearing about it. So, how's that? I think we are going okay. So I understand that we're going to take questions. Oh, and I just have a question that says, will Prince of Shadows be the beginning of a series? Um, Maybe. It's a definite maybe. I think that if all goes well and I can think of what to do next with it, I will definitely do that. Oh, and here's a good question. What do you love most about being an author? Um, I love doing things like this and getting to chat with all of you. I get to travel a lot, which is great. Obviously, I'm in New York City right now. And I love the process of writing too. A lot of authors say they don't like it. I love it. I love it, the challenge of telling a story every 3 months. So I do it a lot. Um, let's see. Oh, another good question. Are Shane and Claire going to get married? Um, for those of you who just started the first book, you may not even know that they like each other. But it's possible. I know that's a really cheat of an answer. And I can only say that because I haven't written book 15 yet. I'm writing book 14. So it hasn't happened yet, but yes, it could happen. Okay, next question is, do you believe in happy endings? Oh my gosh, yes, I do believe in happy endings. I like happy endings on books. Um, in horror novels, often you don't get happy endings, but I think that this is not at its heart a horror story. It is um, it's something positive. So I think that it's going to have a happy ending. I don't know if you're going to like it. I will like it. That's all I can promise you. Um, I have a question from Phoebe Luff in the UK. Hello, Phoebe. Um, Phoebe asks, "Do you already know how to end the series?" Um, yes, I have the plan drawn out for all of the books to the end, and I think I know. But funny things happen when you start writing a story. You may or may not do it the way that you plan to do it. So who knows? I think I know, but it'll probably change a little bit along the way. Maybe I'll find a better way to do it. So yes and no. So for those of you who don't know, this series started out being 3 books, and then we got an extension to 6. And I thought for sure that 6 would be it. And then they asked for 9, and then they asked for 12, and then they asked for 15. So the great thing about that is that I'm still really enjoying writing the series. And so I think 15 is probably the natural end for it at this point. But that doesn't mean I won't think of something else to do with it too. So I'm not sure. Phoebe asked another question, which is, hi Phoebe again. How do you feel about ending the series? Um, bittersweet, I guess, would be a good way to put it. I've lived with these characters very strongly in my head since 2005 when I started writing the first book. So it's been a long journey with them, and I love the characters and I love writing the series. So it's going to be hard to let go, but at the same time, it's also good to finish a series because you want to have something fresh and new to do all the time. And sometimes you can do that within the series, and sometimes you have to just start something else. So I'll know better when I get to book 15, quite honestly. Phoebe also asked, "Ooh, Phoebe, you are just a question machine. Um, do you like the idea of Mernon and Claire together?" For those of you who have not read far enough to know who Mernon is, Mernon is um, a several, well, I would say thousand-ish year old vampire who is bipolar and funny but crazy in a dangerously crazy kind of way. So, do I like the idea of them together? I don't like the idea of Mernon being around anyone with a pulse on a regular basis. I love Mernon, but he's very dangerous. So, um, it's a fun idea, but I think on a practical level, it would be the death of Claire in very short order. So, there's that. Um, Oh, Phoebe, hello again, asks, "Do you picture Mernon looking more like Stuart Townsend or David Tennant?" I started out thinking Stuart Townsend, kind of, or, Ben Barnes, or many of the lovely gentlemen that have played sort of those romantic heroes from that time period. But David Tennant really crept up on me with this. So I have to say that David Tennant is pretty darn persuasive, and I've seen some great videos of people advocating that. So I might have to go with David. Oh, here we go. Let's see. What vampire books do you suggest other than the Heather Brewer books, the L.J. Smith books, the Rochelle Mead books, and the PC Cast books? Vampire romance only, or just plain vampire books? Um, you've covered a really extensive list there of good stuff. There's I think if you want to venture outside of young adult, there's an awful lot. There's not a lot coming out anymore with vampire themes in young adult, mainly because there's been so much good stuff. Um, it's a cyclical thing. The publishing industry tends to say, well, everybody's kind of read that already, so let's do something else. So there's not going to be, I think, a lot of new vampire stuff coming out for the next few years. So if you want to expand your readership on vampire stuff, and if anybody out there knows of new vampire stuff, email or text or put it on Twitter, and Houston, make sure you use the tag HPL Caine, because then our lovely lady who's moderating the chat can see it. But I think you might have to go out into the adult market for it. And vampire romance, there's an awful lot out there. I would recommend even going back to some wonderful books that were, one is called Those Who Hunt the Night by Barbara Hambly. I think it's fantastic. I just love them. So she's got a whole series. I think there's 4 books in that series. There's also George R.R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones, did a book called Fever Dream, which was one of the first really good historical sort of vampire stories, and that's great too. So I can recommend both of those unreservedly, and then I'll think about some more. I have a question of, what is the greatest source of inspiration for your vampire lore in Morganville? I tried to mix it up a little bit. I tried to really go back to the source material. And it's interesting because a lot of what we think we know about vampires, we learned from movies. The vampires in sunlight thing, that's not actually in folklore. In folklore, they didn't like the sun, they avoided the sun, but it was mostly because they were creatures of the night, they were damned, and so they avoided the sun. Um, the bursting into flames thing actually came about because of movies, because they needed a dramatic way to dispose of a villain. So we kind of have to work with that now because everyone thinks it. And if you don't do it, you have to have a really good reason not to do it. So I think that's probably the biggest one that I tried to avoid falling into, although I did do it in the sense that if they're very young, they will burn and burst into flames. If they're very old, though, they can walk around in the daylight, which is consistent with Dracula and that kind of things. But I tried to go back and really think about the mythology versus what we've learned from film and television. Um, Thanks, Phoebe. Great questions. Um, what's the strangest thing that's inspired you? Katie. Hi, Katie. Um, Boy, there's been so many strange things. um, I can't really say exactly. I think that, well, what inspired Morganville in the first place was something very odd because I actually was trying to think of a way to get into this whole vampire story idea. And a friend of mine prompted me as I was driving home in the dark. And she said, just tell me the first thing that comes into your mind. And I said, well, these street lights are really far apart. And she said, well, why would you say that? And I said, because if vampires built a town, they would put street lights really far apart. And she laughed and she said, well, that's an interesting way to start off a vampire book with urban planning. So that's kind of how I started developing the town of Morganville, was the idea of, if I was in charge of this town and I was a vampire, how would I design the town? So that's kind of weird, and it's a weird way to kick off a series, but I think it's really been tremendously successful in making me aware of the town. So strange things happen all the time. That's what writers do. We notice weird things. Um, oh, I have a question. Again, Phoebe. Hello, Phoebe. Do you know? Do you know why? Oh, do you know that Mernon is an Irish girl's name? If so, why did you name him that? Well, I was going for a Welsh name, and Mernon is related to Merlin, or Well, I can't say it in the Welsh accent, so if you're Welsh, you can say it for me. Um, so I was going for a name that was closely related to Merlin, and had a Welsh extraction because I wanted him to be from that area. Um, I'm I didn't know it was a girl's name actually, so that's, thanks for telling me that. But these things happen. It's like Terry. Terry's a girl's name, a boy's name. I don't know. Um, so sorry about that. Oh, here's a question. Do you find it more rewarding to write for adults or teens? Um, I don't know really. I mean, I think the teen market, when I meet teens out there in the real world and online, they're so fun and they're so enthusiastic and they get so involved in the story. And for a writer, that's tremendous because we're obviously really involved in the story or we wouldn't be writing it. So it's really fun to meet people who are just as invested in it. And that happens more in the teen market, I think, than it does in the adult market. People are a little more reserved. So in that sense, I think the teen market is a little more fun in interactions. Um, the adult market is fun for different reasons, I think. It's because you get to do different kinds of things and different kinds of events, but I like them both. So that's why I do both. Another question is, Phoebe, you don't have to apologize for all the questions. I'm happy to answer them. How old roughly do you think Amelie, Oliver, and Mernon are? Mernon is actually the eldest of those three. Amelie is the second eldest, and Oliver is the youngest of the bunch. So Amelie's about, I'm going to roughly say about 750, I think, or 800, somewhere in there. And Oliver is younger than that. Mernon's older than that. So that's kind of, I haven't got their exact birthdays, I'll confess, but I know the time period in which they were born. Here's another question. What is your favorite genre to write? I have written in so many genres, you guys, really, a lot. I've done teen books, I've done adult urban fantasy, I've done science fiction, I've done horror. I mean, real, true horror with the black covers and the blood. I've done romance, I've done suspense. Um, I think that no matter which of those genres I was doing, though, I always ended up putting some element of the paranormal in them, even my romances. And so I think that I'd have to say the paranormal, no matter what setting I put it in, kind of is my genre. Um, it's kind of fun to have a paranormal suspense or a paranormal romance or a paranormal teen book. So that's probably my natural home, I would think. By the way, I haven't always been Rachel Caine. Do you guys know that? I started out writing under my real name, which was at the time Roxanne Longstreet. That was my maiden name, and I wrote horror as under that name. And then I started writing as Roxanne Conrad, which is my married name, and I wrote some suspense and romance under that name. And Rachel Caine was the name I used for my urban fantasy and then my teen books. So um, it's been, and Ellen, one more name, Julie Fortune, because I begged to write a Stargate Media tie-in book, but they wouldn't let me put my other names on them. So I had to become another person, which was Julie Fortune. I have another question. Is it hard to keep straight all the series that you write at once? Um, yes and no. It's hard to keep a series straight, period, because it goes on a really long time. Um, but I don't write them all at once. I know that sounds weird because they're going on all at once, but what I do is I have very strict scheduling. So I have usually one book I'm working on for 2 or 3 months, and I don't work on the other books or series during that time except to do page proofs or edits. But I'm working on one book at a time. So in that sense, it's a little easier to keep it straight. But as the series get longer and longer, and Weather Warden was 9 books, and Morganville's going to 15, it gets kind of hard to remember the details as you get that many words, because if you look at 9 books at 100,000 words each, you're almost 1,000,000 words that you have to remember right there in one series. So that's, I think, the hardest thing about it. Um, I had a question of what is your writing process like for each book or project? Um, my writing process is pretty straightforward. I tend to have a synopsis that I write ahead of time, and that's basically just a thumbnail description of the plot. Um, I try to know what my beginning, middle, and end is. I may not necessarily write that when I get into the book, because as I'm working through the details, I may think of something that's better than the synopsis, so I may go off track. But that's where I start from. I typically get up every day early, like in the dark, and I write for about 6 to 7 hours a day. Um, and the rest of the day is Twitter and email and doing all of the business stuff I have to do. And I write pretty much every day of the week because I have a lot of deadlines. So I don't get too many days off. Even when I'm traveling, I still write every day as much as I possibly can. So that's my process. It's pretty straightforward. Um, let's see. Ooh, I have a question. Would you be open to coming to schools, especially mine, says Phoebe. Um, Phoebe, you're in the UK, and I'm in Texas. Well, not right now, I'm in New York, but I'm generally in Texas. So it's a real effort for me to get over to the UK. I've been there twice in the past 2 years. I'm going to probably come back next year, but it's going to be late in the year. Um, So I'm open to visiting schools, and we do visit some schools, but we try to do as much of the country as we can in one go. I did 30 stops in the last tour in the UK, so I don't know. I tell you what, though, if you write to my UK publisher, which is Allison and Busby, and you tell them that you want me to come to your school, then they can look into it and see what they can do. Because I can't promise, but maybe they can. I have another question. With your appearance at New York Comic Con coming up tomorrow, yay! Do you have any plans for a graphic novel adaptation of Morganville or one of your other series? I would love to do a graphic novel adaptation. My problem is right now time. I really, my schedule is so jam packed with deadlines that I have deadlines straight up through, gosh, May of next year, and I really don't have any room in there to try to add another project in. After I get through my May deadlines, then I'm going to look at doing maybe a graphic novel adaptation of Weather Warden, which I think would be super fun and super cool, and take a lot less special effects than a movie. But I would love to do, seriously, graphic novels, film, television, all of that stuff. I'm a big old geek, and I love all forms of media. So yeah, I'd love it. I have another question, which is, what have your experiences been with rejection when trying to get published? Um, I'm a weird case. I always hate telling this story because it gives people the wrong impression. But I I ended up meeting my first editor at the first conference I ever attended. And I walked right up to him and I said, I want to be a writer. And he said, well, I happen to be looking for writers for a project. Would you be interested in submitting something, a writing sample? And I said yes, and I sent something in. And he liked it, and he hired me to write this project. So that was my first writing job. And it was a novel. I had never written a novel before. Didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. And then the kind of the same thing happened with my second book. I met an editor. I had the book already half written. She bought it, and so all of that was actually really easy. I know that sounds weird, but not to worry. My rejection came later because all of those early things that I did, and I did 5 books very quickly. Um, I didn't. They didn't sell. People didn't buy them. So that meant uh, my my poor publisher was not making any money, and so that was when I got rejected. Was after 5 books, I couldn't sell them another book, and so I've gone through dry periods where I've gotten rejected a lot. Um, I get rejected on short stories all the time. I just got rejected yet again from the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, which I've been trying to get into since I was 14 years old. So one of these days, I swear. But I collect the rejection letters because they're fun. Um, I have a question of, what would you prefer for the series, a TV or movie? I'm going to assume that you're talking about the Morganville series. The Morganville series, I think, really lends itself to TV versus movies because there's so much mythology, there's so many characters now, and there's so much of a story. It's really very much about the town they're in as well as the characters who are there. So I would say TV show. Movies, I think, would be better for the Weather Warden series, although I could kind of see a TV show in that too, but they're such big epic books that I believe that movies would probably be the way to go. Um, Not that I can make that happen. People email me all the time and say, would you make a TV show out of this? I can't because, like you, I probably don't have that money lying around my bank account or in my couch cushions. Film and television take a lot of money. And what happens is you have to get a bunch of investors, you have to get a bunch of studio people on board, you have to put all these deals together. It's very complicated. And often, most of the time, they fall apart. So, although we keep trying, things keep going to a certain point, and then, things happen. So, one of these days, maybe so, but not so far. Um, do I have any advice for writers? Yes, lots of it. The biggest thing I have to say is it's so easy today to become published. And when I say that, I mean there are so many options. There's self-publishing, there's e-book publishing, there's small press, there's big traditional houses, and all of those are legitimate ways to go. But there are also some of them that aren't going to take you very far under most circumstances. Ebook is changing a lot. So in the beginning, I said I don't really see how you get there from here. But I think that what's most important, though, is before you think about publishing, you have to think about writing. Writing is a craft you learn, and it's very much like music, like dance, like sport, like anything else. You get good at it over time. So don't think that when you write the first thing you've written that you're done, because you're not. There's a common saying among writers: you have to write your million words of crap, and it's true. I think all of us have to write that kind of due diligence that says, I now understand how to use my words real good. Because it's a hard thing to tell a story and to tell it well and to tell it in a way that involves other people. So once you get to the point where you can do that, that's when you look at publishing. But not when you write your first thing. Generally speaking, there are always exceptions to this. I know people that wrote one book and made huge deals and are amazing and famous, and that's awesome. But they're exceptions. So write like you're not the exception. Make sure that you're the best you can be before you pursue publishing. Because once it's out there, guys, once your work is in the marketplace and it's online and people can download it, and especially if they're paying anything for it, that's a tough place to be, especially if you maybe didn't do your best work that you could possibly do, because people are ruthless when they don't like your stuff. And for many new writers, it can be really overwhelming. I mean, even for established writers, they can kind of lose it after a while. But but you learn over time how to deal with criticism and constructive criticism, because all criticism, in a sense, is constructive, even if it's you suck. But okay, that one maybe not so much. But there are always things to be learned from criticism. So that's my advice. I know that was long and rambling, but I hope it helps. If you have questions, pile them on, because we still got 30 more minutes in the chat, so go for it. A question: what do you miss most about Texas when you're on the road? It depends on when I'm on the road and where I'm going. I have to say that I don't miss it during the entire summer, which is from April to probably late September. I don't miss Texas when I'm gone because it's hot. It's really hot, and I get tired of being hot. So I would much rather get out of Texas and go someplace nice. It was funny when I was in England and they were saying, "Oh no, it's so warm here," and I'm thinking we would kill for this weather. It was just amazing. But that's probably what I don't miss. I miss it now a little bit, but then again, I'm in New York and it's fall and the leaves are all different colors and it's so beautiful. And so I don't know that I miss a lot except Mexican food. I have to have Mexican food. It's like a thing because I grew up with it. So that's my home cooking. And if I don't get it, I start missing it. Luckily, this hotel actually has a Mexican restaurant in it. So this is why I stay here. I'm so spoiled. But I actually have loved all of the food that we've gotten on trips to. The food that I've had all through the last tours has been amazing. So I'm broadening my horizons, but I always come back to my Mexican food sooner or later. Um, is Jeremy from Dark Rides coming to Morganville? Ah, it's Phoebe left from the UK. Hi, Phoebe. Um, Jeremy. Well, Jeremy was a character that I invented for the short story. If you haven't read it, Dark Rides is a free short story that's up on the Morganville Vampires website. If you haven't seen it yet, it's just been redone from scratch and it looks amazing. There's all kinds of new stuff in there. And my webmistress spent months and months reconfiguring this thing and she did a fantastic job. So go look. But Dark Rides is out there, and Jeremy is a character that you will meet in the Carnival story. Uh, is he coming to Morganville? I think he probably will. And I think that he probably will figure into book 15 at some point, but I don't know how or when or where. So, yes, but I don't know exactly how he's going to get there or what's going to happen. So, good question. Um, ooh, here's another one. Do you believe in witchcraft and Wicca? Ah, I believe in the historical significance of it. Um, I'm not a believer in the sense of believing. So I know people who do. I don't. I'm kind of a show me kind of person. So if I can't, like see a provable demonstration that I can't debunk, then it's kind of tough to convince me. Although I do say my house is haunted, but I have actual proof. So there you go. Um, how many? Oh, Sheena Baga from UK, who is friends with Phoebe. Hi, Sheena. Um, says how many other vampires are coming to Morganville? Um, Not too many more. I think we've got almost all of them now that they're still wandering around out there. Um, some are leaving, some are coming in. So uh, I don't think that we're going to see anybody new except maybe Jeremy, quite honestly, in book 15. Now, you are going to see some new vampires in book 14, which has some surprises coming up. But book 13, I should probably back up a little bit. Book 13 is Bitter Blood, and it's coming out in November. You may already know that. If you don't, now you do. And I think that in book 13, you're going to get some surprises. And it brings everything back a little bit to the beginning when Claire got there, I would say. So book 14 is quite different, and it's gonna kind of shake up the world a little bit. Um, which leads me to my next question, which is, will book 15 wrap everything up neatly, or will there be room for additions to the series? Um, I think I can wrap everything up in book 15, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for more. Um, People have suggested maybe doing a spin-off series of adult characters, or following some side characters, or doing that kind of thing. I'm always open to thinking about that. Right now, I just don't know. So I think there's probably room for more, but it may not be in the same incarnation or following the same characters. So we'll see. And I'm taking an informal poll on which characters you might want to see me do more with in either ebook forms or short fiction or things like that. So if you want to put in your vote, email me or tweet me or Facebook me and let me know who you want to see in stories because I'm interested in doing those and I want to know who you want to see. Um, oh, here's another question. Do you prefer writing the long series or standalone novels? Um, Generally, I like long series because it's like a TV show in that you're building layers of character and layers of experience, which I think is very interesting to do. You get to know the characters much better than if you're introduced to them in one book and you're kind of in and out of their lives. That's more like a movie. While I love movies, I love TV shows even better. So, now really long series are, you know, as I mentioned before, kind of super hard. So my ideal series length is probably 6 books. Um, Once you get past 6, it begins to get kind of a juggling act a little bit with the characters to make sure that you're not going over the same territory, you're not resetting them, you're not doing all of that stuff. Another question. If you could write for any existing TV show, which one would you want to write for? Um, hmm. Does Buffy count? No, I guess not. Uh, Firefly, darn, gone. Um, I think I'd probably have to say there's so many good ones on right now that it's really hard to pick one. Well, obviously, I'd love to write Vampire Diaries, but you know, it's kind of covered. Um, Fringe, I love Fringe. I love Supernatural. Yes, I do. There's hardly any paranormal shows that I wouldn't want to write for. I would love to write for Person of Interest because I did a series called Red Letter Days, which had a similar premise actually, and I think that it would be really fun to write for that. But I'm a total crazy person with television shows. Don't get me started. I have a list. Oh, and here is Mellow Mesh, who says, "Have you ever thought of having a book with just your Morganville short stories?" Hi, Michelle. Sorry, I just gave away your chat name. Um, yes, I have thought of having a book with just the short stories. Um, I just I keep having this discussion in my head about it because I gave away so many of those stories, and I feel kind of wrong to then collect them and sell them. Does that sound weird? Because I gave them to you and I don't want you to pay for them. So if I were going to do that, I would be pulling together all of the existing stories and writing a bunch more that are totally original because I wouldn't want you to buy something that you could, if you had the time and effort, pull together from a bunch of different sources. Um, that's a little bit too easy for me, and I'm not about easy. So I hope you think that's fair. I just really have a problem with charging people money for something that I've already given away. Um, Houston Library Centers, hello. Who did you like with Buffy more, Spike or Angel? Ooh. I loved the Angel vibe because it was all very Romeo and Juliet, tragic love, can't ever at work. I loved Spike because he's like, yeah, stuff that. I don't care about tragic love. We're going to make it work one way or the other because that's who I am. I liked his confidence. So I'd have to say Spike, although I still respect and love Angel. In the Vampire Diaries, who do I think Elena should be with? Oh, this is another Phoebe question. Excellent. Um, oh, goodness. I love Stefan, but dang, I like Damon. I mean, I just think Damon is snarky and funny and sharp, and he'd probably be a terrible boyfriend. Yeah, he probably would be. But a great, well, you know, he's just great to hang around, however you look at it. So I guess probably this goes into a great question that Sarah Reese Brennan likes to ask. If you haven't read Sarah's work, by the way, she wrote the Demon Lexicon, and she's got a new book out called Unspoken. Go buy it. Um, but she likes to ask this question, which is very British, and it's marry, shag, cliff. And it's, who of your characters would you marry? Who would you, we usually substitute kiss for shag. Who would you kiss? And who would you throw off a cliff? And in my series, I would say probably marry Caine, kiss Myrnan, throw Monica off a cliff. Your mileage may vary. I have had a guy, Sarah's answer to this same question for Morganville was she would marry Claire, she would kiss Caine, and she would then she would throw Caine off the cliff because she was going to marry Claire. So you know, you can figure that out for yourself. So I don't know. That's a good question to ask with Elena. But I think probably marry Stefan and, you know, kiss Damon. Why not? What has been your favorite writing project so far, and what was best about it? And what would your dream writing project be? My favorite writing project probably is, you know, it's so hard to say that because it's usually the one you're working on as a writer, because you have to be enthusiastic about what's in front of you. But if you look in the rearview mirror, then you can kind of pick out some favorites. Looking in the rearview mirror, I'd probably say the Prince of Shadows book that's coming out in 2014 was a super hard challenge and something completely different for me. And so I was really excited about it, and I remain really excited about it. So probably that one. And what was best about it was so challenging. This is a story. This is a Romeo and Juliet story. It's set in period Verona, but it tells the story a completely different way and through the eyes of different characters. So it's quite hard to do, but it's also very exciting to do. So yeah, that's probably my favorite right now. And my dream writing project, well, I don't know. I think probably, you know, okay, if the great suspense novelists, Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, called me up and said, we want you to write with us on an Agent Pendergast novel, that was probably be my dream project because I love those books so much. But that's never going to happen. So I'll just be happy with what I've got. What were your favorite books as a kid or teen? And what are your favorite books now that you think everybody should read? Gosh, as a kid, I will kind of separate kid and teen. I think up to the age of about 12, I didn't read a whole lot. I read fairy tales a lot, and I liked fairy tales. I read books about ballet dancers and horses and, you know, the typical girl books. But when I turned about 12, I started reading science fiction and fantasy, and then I got very quickly into Stephen King, you know, and all of those kinds of things. But I think my favorite from that period probably was one of the first science fiction books I ever read. And it's honestly a book nobody's ever heard of, so I probably won't even say the title. And it was really nothing that stood out from the rest of them. It was just the first book I got that made me think about the world differently. So that's the one that changes your life. And it doesn't even have to be a particularly good book. It's just the one that opens that little door in your mind and lets you see the bigger world. So after that happened, I would say as a teen, I became a big Stephen King fan. So I love Stephen King's books, but that was at a time when there wasn't really a lot out there for teens as an age group. You went pretty much straight from Nancy Drew to, you know, Jackie Collins. So I would do it differently were I a teen now, because there's so much good stuff out there, and there's so much that you can read. In fact, that's why more and more adults are reading young adult, because there's so much good work being done. Favorite books now that I think everybody should read. I always like to say, don't just read what's out now. Go back and look at books of the past, because there's a reason they teach you about classics in school. You may hate them at the time, but later on you start looking at them and saying, "Oh my gosh, that really was good." So I love classics. I also love, I have a shameless love of fantasy. So I would say everybody should read, at least try to read Tolkien, um, to give you a feel of what epic fantasy really is like. Um, and then that carries over into, you know, Terry Brooks and the sort of, and the Shannara books and things like that. But there's so many good books out there. I just can't even begin to give you a reading list, because everybody's reading list is different. Um, if you really want specific recommendations in a particular kind of line, like Phoebe did earlier with her, you know, vampire romance books, then email me and I'll try to look some up for you. But because if I don't know them off the top of my head, I can probably find you a list. But and I always try to do that because I want people to find what they're looking for. People do that for me too, which is great. Um, oh, Sarah Wayne. Hi, Sarah Wayne on Twitter. Asks, who is your favorite character from the Morganville Vampires and why? Um, it is really, it's really hard to pick a favorite character from Morganville because they're all fun in different ways to write. But I think probably it's a tie between Caine and Myrnin, because I always know what Shane's going to do. I never know what Myrnin's going to do. And then you put them together and it's like, boom. I love Eve's snarkiness, so it's kind of a three-way race there. I don't know. Claire is subtly hard to write because she's the main character, and therefore she doesn't get to be quite as flashy as the other characters. But that's probably my best answer. Is, you know, one of those three, and you know, your mileage may vary. Um, Phoebe's going to spoil something, so I'm going to try to rephrase this in a little better way. Um, okay, in a specific book, there are hints that perhaps Michael may like Claire in ways that that possibly he shouldn't. Um, will that ever be brought up again? Um, yes. It will be an issue. It's not what you think it is, I guess, would be my best possible answer to that. But you're going to get an answer to that question in Bitter Blood, which is coming out in November. So I don't want to spoil it too much. Oh, here's another question. Do you read Morganville fan fiction? If so, which one's your favorite? I would love to read fan fiction because I love it, but I can't read it because for purely personal reasons, um, my my publisher really doesn't want me to read it, and legally I'm not allowed to read it, because if I happen to write something then that resembles something in fan fiction, people can say, "Oh, you stole my idea," and I don't want to. I don't want to have that that issue. Uh, it's not that I don't love fanfic. I do. I just would. There just has to be a wall between me and the fanfic. So I can't read it. Sorry, but I hear it's good. So I read other people's fanfic and other off of other books, but not mine. Um, what achievement, award, or signing are you most proud of? And that's Caitlin Bartello. Hi, Caitlin. What achievement, award, or signing? Um, Awards are great, and they're a fantastic honor, but I don't necessarily think that that they're exactly achievements, because there are usually a lot of other people that could have easily gotten the same award because they're just as great, they're just as fantastic writers. maybe they just didn't have that one extra vote on the committee. So it's all very kind of, I don't know, subjective. So although I love getting awards, and who doesn't, I don't really consider them to be justification, I guess. Um, so achievements, I'm just proud of the fact that I've stuck with it in writing, because I got thrown out of three publishing houses, well, two publishing houses in a row, for not selling enough books. And I could have quit at any point. I could have quit before I was published. I could have quit after I was published. Um, I could quit tomorrow if I wanted. But the fact is, I think an achievement has to do with overcoming an obstacle. And for me, every day is a new challenge. So I'm just happy to be doing what I'm doing. Um, so that's, and as far as signings, all my signings are awesome. I love the people that show up at my signings, and we have a fantastic time. I had a great time on the Smart Chicks tour recently, so I hope you were there. If you weren't, come next time if we do it again, because it's really fun. Oh no, it looks like we're having closing remarks now. So, do I have any closing remarks to leave with us today? Yes, I do. I want to thank you very much for coming. Um, I know that this is maybe not the way that you usually spend your afternoon on a Thursday. So, thanks for coming and throwing in so many questions. Houston Library, you're fantastic. I love you. And thanks for giving me the chance to do this with you today. Um, and I really, for those of you who are writers, please keep writing, please keep working. Uh, it's not a business where you win if you give up. So you have to keep going. And if you're readers, it's never been a better time to be reading. There's so much, there's so much richness. Um, and seek out the things that maybe you don't expect. Look for the things that are going to challenge you, because there's a lot out there, and it's how you grow as a reader. So, thank you very much. Libraries are fantastic places to find new things that you might not buy, but you might want to take a chance on. So it's a good place to do that. Oh, I have one more quick question. It's the last one of the day. Sarah Wayne 2 asks how to find out about signings. Ooh, good question. On my website, and you can find this on both my Rachel Caine site and on the Morganville site. They're two separate sites, but they link together. There's going to be a calendar that I update, and it's through eventful.com. It's going to show you all of the upcoming signings. Right now, what I have coming up is I'll be in Halifax, Nova Scotia for a convention called HalCon, and that's going to be in about 2 weeks. So it's a 3-day convention. Then I will be doing, I will be going to Australia for 3 weeks, and I'll be doing Supernova both in Brisbane and Adelaide. And I will be doing signings as well in Sydney and Melbourne while I'm there. So that's kind of the Australia piece. I will have some more things coming, but I know I've got a signing coming up at the Allen Public Library in Allen, Texas. And then I've also got into 2013 a great Teen Day event with the Montgomery County Teen Festival. So that is either up on my site or it's going to be up very soon. And that is close to Houston. So that's kind of what I've got going on. There'll be more coming in 2013. It's not going to be quite as crazy as this year. This year's just been nuts, but that's kind of how you find out what's going on with me. So thank you very much, and you guys have been fantastic. Thanks for putting up with my amazing background of the copy machine and the door, random people. So everybody have a great time the rest of the day, and I'm going to go to Comic-Con, and I will tell them you said hello, and I will also tell them how fantastic Houston is. So see you later. Bye.